In the heart of a small, forgotten town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there was a legend whispered among the locals. It spoke of an ancient bond between humans and animals, a bond so powerful that it could bridge even the deepest divides. But this wasn't just any story. It was one rooted in fear, suspicion, and hope. The townsfolk believed that somewhere deep within those woods lived a creature unlike any other, a dog said to possess the soul of a warrior, fierce yet noble, loyal yet untamed. They called him Ragnar. Ragnar wasn't just a stray or a wild beast roaming the forest. He was something more, an enigma wrapped in fur and muscle, with eyes as golden as the setting sun. Some claimed he'd been abandoned by his owners when they moved away, while others whispered darker tales, that Ragnar had turned on them after being mistreated, forcing their departure from the land. Whatever the truth, no one dared approach him. For years he roamed alone, surviving off scraps and hunting small game, his presence both feared and revered. But what if the legends were wrong? What if Ragnar wasn't the monster everyone believed him to be? This is where our story begins. Not with a roar, but with a quiet moment of doubt, a flicker of curiosity that would change everything. It all started on a cold winter morning, when frost clung stubbornly to the ground like a reluctant lover. In the center of the town stood a modest cabin belonging to Elara, a young woman whose life revolved around her work at the local animal shelter. She was extraordinary in appearance, just another face in the crowd, but her heart carried a fire that few understood. Elara had always felt drawn to the misunderstood, the broken, the one society deemed unworthy of love. And perhaps that's why fate chose her for this journey. Elara woke up early that day, her breath visible in the icy air as she stepped outside. Her fingers tightened around the mug of coffee she held, its warmth barely enough to fend off the biting chill. As she sipped, her thoughts drifted to the rumors about Ragnar. She'd heard them countless times before, how he prowled the outskirts of town, how his growl could freeze blood, how his gaze could pierce through walls. Yet, despite the warnings, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. Maybe he's not the monster they say he is, she murmured to herself, staring out into the distance. Or maybe I'm just fooling myself. Her words hung heavy in the stillness of the morning. Part of her wanted to believe the worst, that Ragnar truly was dangerous, but another part refused to let go of the possibility that he might simply be misunderstood. After all, hadn't she seen enough pain in the world to know that appearances often lied? As the hours passed, Elara found herself distracted. At the shelter, she went through the motions of feeding the animals and cleaning their pens, but her mind kept returning to Ragnar. By midday, she made a decision, one that would alter the course of her life forever. "I need to see him," she whispered, almost as though saying it aloud would make it real. The walk to the edge of the forest took longer than she expected. Each step brought a fresh wave of apprehension, every rustle of leaves sending her pulse racing. When she finally reached the tree line, she paused, her boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. The forest loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, its shadows stretching like ghostly fingers. Somewhere inside, Ragnar waited. Taking a deep breath, Elara stepped forward. For hours, she wandered through the trees, calling softly, hoping against hope that Ragnar would reveal himself. But the forest remained silent, its secrets tightly guarded. Just as despair began to creep in, she saw a movement, a flash of gold amidst the underbrush. Her breath caught in her throat. There he was. Ragnar emerged slowly, his massive frame moving with a grace that belied his size. His coat was matted and dirty, his ribs faintly visible beneath the fur. But it was his eyes that held her captive, those piercing golden orbs that seemed to look straight into her soul. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, without warning, Ragnar bared his teeth and let out a low, guttural growl. Elara froze, her heart hammering wildly. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee back to the safety of the town. But something deeper, something primal, rooted her to the spot. Slowly, carefully, she knelt down, holding out her hand. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I just want to help." Ragnar didn't move. Instead, he studied her intently, his ears twitching as though trying to decipher the meaning behind her words. Minutes stretched into eternity. the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, with a snort of disdain, Ragnar turned and disappeared back into the forest. Elara exhaled sharply, realizing only then that she'd been holding her breath. Though he hadn't attacked, the encounter left her shaken. Still, she couldn't deny the spark of connection she'd felt. A fleeting glimpse of something buried beneath layers of mistrust and pain. Over the next few weeks, Elara returned to the forest again and again, determined to earn Ragnar's trust. Each visit was a test of patience and courage, each interaction fraught with uncertainty. Sometimes, he would appear briefly before vanishing once more. Other times, he wouldn't show up at all, leaving Elara to wonder she'd imagined the entire thing. But slowly, incrementally, progress was made. One day, she brought food, a simple offering of meat scraps, and left it on the ground before retreating a safe distance away. To her astonishment, Ragnar approached cautiously, sniffing the air before devouring the meal. Another time, she sang softly, her voice carrying through the trees, and Ragnar tilted his head, listening intently. Through these small victories, a fragile bond began to form. Elara learned to read his body language, to anticipate his moods. She discovered that beneath his gruff exterior lay a creature capable of immense loyalty and affection, if only someone was brave enough to reach out. Then came the day that changed everything. Elara arrived at the forest's edge as usual, her arms laden with supplies. Winter had given way to spring, and the air smelled sweet with the promise of new beginnings. But as she ventured deeper into the woods, she noticed something unusual, a faint whimper, barely audible over the rustling leaves. Following the sound, she found Ragnar lying on the ground, his breathing labored. Blood seeped from a wound on his side, and his usually vibrant eyes were dull with pain. Panic surged through Elara, but she forced herself to stay calm. Dropping to her knees beside him, she placed a gentle hand on his head. "It's okay," she murmured, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm here." Ragnar flinched at first, his instincts urging him to fight or flee. But exhaustion won out, and he allowed her to examine the injury. It looked bad, a deep gash likely caused by a trap set by hunters. Without hesitation, Elara tore a strip of fabric from her shirt and pressed it firmly against the wound to staunch the bleeding. "We need to get you out of here," she said, her tone firm despite the tears streaming down her face. "Come on, Ragnar. Trust me." Summoning every ounce of strength she possessed, Elara managed to coax Ragnar onto his feet. Supporting his weight as best she could, she guided him back toward the town, each step a monumental effort. By the time they reached her cabin, both were drenched in sweat and covered in mud, but alive. Inside, Elara tended to Ragnar's wounds with trembling hands. She cleaned the injury, applied antiseptic, and bandaged it tightly, all while whispering soothing words. Ragnar watched her silently, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. For the first time, he allowed himself to fully relax in her presence, his massive head resting on her lap as she stroked his fur. Days turned into weeks, and under Elara's care, Ragnar began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The barriers he'd erected around himself crumbled bit by bit, replaced by a newfound trust and affection. In return, Elara found solace in companionship, her loneliness melting away with each wag of his tail. But their journey was far from over. Word of Elara's actions spread quickly through the town, sparking heated debates. Some praised her bravery, hailing her as a hero who had tamed a monster. Others accused her of recklessness, claiming she was putting the entire community at risk. Tensions escalated until one fateful evening, when a group of angry townsfolk gathered outside her cabin, demanding that Ragnar be removed, or worse. Faced with hostility and fear, Elara stood her ground, refusing to surrender the dog who had become her family. With Ragnar by her side, she addressed the crowd, her voice ringing clear and strong. "He's not the monster you think he is," she declared, her eyes blazing with conviction. "He's a living, breathing creature who deserves compassion and understanding. If you can't see that, then maybe the real monsters are standing right here." Her words struck a chord, silencing the mob. Though not everyone agreed, many began to reconsider their stance, inspired by Elara's unwavering belief in the goodness hidden beneath the surface. Years later, Ragnar became a symbol of hope and redemption in the town. Children laughed as they played fetch with him in the park, their fears replaced by admiration. Adults marveled at the transformation, realizing too late how quick they had been to judge. And Elara? She continued her work at the shelter, using Ragnar's story to teach others about the power of empathy and second chances. As for Ragnar, he never forgot the woman who had saved him, not because she needed him, but because she believed in him. Together, they proved that even the wildest hearts could find peace when met with kindness.